I think a lot of young people don't think about it, and I don't think they want to think about it.
I think when I'm 80 years old, I probably won't be having sex.
Around 70 years old, people just completely forget there is that aspect of human being.
You have to kind of have some muscles working in order to be able to actually successfully do that.
If they were forced to think about it, I mean, it's just kind of a horrifying image to think about.
I remember my grandfather as this really beautiful, sexy guy. And I remember him leaving for gigs, and he would leave in the evening, and he would be dressed in a tuxedo, and he had these beautiful, sparkling blue eyes.
Every night at 5:15.
He had traveled in a show with Abbott and Costello. It's such an era. And I was visiting him on his 94th birthday, and he said, "I've never lost my attraction for the opposite sex." The people around him, who were much younger, the staff helping him, thought that, oh, he's so cute, and we find him in bed with his wife. And I really could tell that it bothered him. And I thought, what happened? At what point between sexy big band musician and 94-year-old guy with the same blue eyes the whole way does that change? When does he become cute?
Oh, no, we won't let you. The nickels and dimes come to us.
There's a story here that needs to be told, and this is about all of us.
Love is ageless. Touch is ageless. Intimacy is ageless. Sexuality is ageless.
We're human, and I don't know why people think that you get a certain age and you no longer have a sexual desire.
When I'm a grandfather, I'd like to say I'm still having sex. Hopefully I have the energy and physicalness too.
I have a tendency to think that as we get older, our sex life gets better.
How about I'm in a mood for love?
And the reason that I think that is because the last part of your life that I think most people mature in is their sexual lives. I honestly believe that.
Of course it gets better, because you know each and every part of one another.
For me, things keep getting better. So I'm hoping that things just keep getting better, and I don't want to give up anything.
Rooster, I got a rooster.
The desire to have it all as we age is becoming the norm as the boomers begin to cross over the 65 threshold.
I got a little red rooster.
We have 78 million baby boomers on the precipice of old age, even though we refuse to admit it.
There's not going to be the same sort of rules for people as they get older. They're going to be continuing to break boundaries.
Our generation that brought sexuality out into the sunshine, they're not going to ever stop being involved, and they're not going to just go quietly.
Whether or not the summer of love will have a second coming remains to be seen, but there's no denying that a senior tsunami is about to hit. By 2020, there will be 19 million people over 80 living in the U.S. This is triple of the amount there are today. Information, resources, and policy to accommodate these desires are hard to find.
I'm very surprised, frankly, at how slow-moving the whole issue of sexuality in long-term care has progressed. There are 78 million of us that grew up in a generation of drugs, sex, and rock and roll, so it's time for us to start really facing it and dealing with it.
No one was talking out loud about it. No one was revealing what it's really like. That sex at our age could be so dynamic and wonderful, exhilarating.
I've always been amazed that when I'm talking to the man after he's recovered sufficiently from his anesthesia, instead of the question being, did you get it all? Meaning, did you get all the cancer? The question is, did you spare my nerves? Because that's what contributes to his ability to recover his sexual function. That's the first thing that he wants to know. It's as important as air, food, and water. I put sex, the top 4.
Food doesn't keep you alive, but being close does. Whether you call it love, like, or something, but just being close together, it does. Yeah.
Sex may be good for grandma and granddad, but society is a long way from embracing that image.
Supple. It's like I was at your age. Back then I was a sex expert. Used to call me the buttered biscuit.
In the mainstream media and in film, sex between older adults is often portrayed as demeaning, over-sentimental, or what I really hate, cute.
Have you had sex in this car yet?
Our society sees older people in a really denigrating way, sexually particularly.
Just think about the anecdotal conversations I've had with people. When I say, hey, I'm working on this project about older adults and sexuality, there's always this hesitation. Well, how so? Old people want to have sex? Oh, really?
The challenge to find visual images that reinforced a positive, romantic, and respectful portrayal of senior sex was daunting. And then I came across this film.
Who doesn't want that kiss? There is nothing cute about that. It's stunning.
German filmmaker Andreas Dresen broke stereotypes with his award-winning film, Cloud 9.
Why do we think always that people who are older than 60 or 70 have no passion, no sex? This is stupid. And of course, we wanted to have nudity and sexuality in it. Give these people the pictures, because there are no pictures in many of the movies about that. Usually we think it stops when you are 60, nothing happens anymore, but this is not true, and because of that we wanted to speak about that in a really realistic way.
Passion on their faces, and he just looks like he could devour her. Whether you're 15 or 50 or 90, everybody dreams about that moment. He is sexy, isn't he?
Sexy is when you feel the sensuality in your own body, in your own mind, in your own emotions.
What is old? I mean, we shut our eyes and we're 20 years old. We're 30 years old. I think it's just it.
He walked in, I looked into his eyes, and I tried to remember to breathe. I didn't know him well enough to be in love, but I was powerfully in lust with this man.
And he just said, "Hello, gorgeous." And I went, "Hello," because I didn't know what was going on. I thought, I want this man. He is hot.
I was thinking about my grandfather, and he still had that inner desire for contact, it was like a sexual energy. It was right after his 80th birthday, and he married a woman, and they went to Paris on their honeymoon, and he was writing music and playing for her, and he grew a beard in Paris. And he told me that he was really in love with her, and when he was 94, he said, "What I wouldn't do to be 80 again." And it was just really special, and it was like proof positive to me that Those feelings that we have can be just as intense, and they're just as, they're just as valuable and intense, if not more, at any point in our lives, especially when we're older. What is the process like of re-engaging in intimacy, and not just making love, but lingering with someone?
With this relationship, it's just so natural. And I remember early in the relationship being in bed, and we weren't totally committed then, but I remember waking up and looking and saying, is this the man I can love for the rest of my life?
I like this. I like this. You sure you don't need another take? One more take.
When I met her, I wasn't thinking at first about settling down.
He began to spend weekends at my house because he was teaching during the week.
About the second week, I got tired of packing. I said, look, I'm just going to put my stuff in. And she turned to me and says, baby, you have a home right here. And it hit me, and I started to cry and think, and all these emotions started rushing out. And she had a lot of respect for me, and she cared about me. She really cared about me,
We were like teenagers with 40 years of experience. Everything that had happened during our lives was there, but we could still just have a good time.
I never was attracted to the Southern Belle syndrome or just a nice little. That doesn't excite me. That's not interesting to me. I want some pushback. Somebody saying something, yeah. Because she's very quote unquote feisty, extremely opinionated. She'll bite a hot doorknob, if she thinks she's right. So that's what I like about her.
I think my life as it would have been without him would have been so quiet and the same. And I could have spent the rest of my life knitting. But I've come alive, and he's made me that way. And he has just opened up a world that I never knew existed, and feel an excitement that I never thought I would ever feel.
As we age, we know ourselves better, our wants and desires, so it only makes sense we love with more intensity. But what about the physical act? Can it match the emotional highs?
One of the things many people don't realize is our main sex organ isn't the penis, isn't the clitoris, it's the brain.
I don't think that the orgasm part's the most important part. I think it's all the other stuff that happens prior to the orgasm stuff that's the most important. Having an orgasm is bloody easy. Anybody can do that. It's all the other shit that's a lot more difficult and requires more thought and effort.
It isn't the same every time. Sometimes it's like, oh, gosh, I almost missed that. That did happen, didn't it? I guess it did. And other times it's, oh, whoa, let me float on this for an hour.
Hopefully, we all know what an orgasm feels like, and most of us can fake it, even if we don't.
With orgasm, hormones and proteins are released. Oxytocin is released. This leads to a sense of well-being. So there are chemicals, neurotransmitters that are released as a result of sexual activity that contributes to their health.
This should be part of our regular routine health maintenance. You brush, you floss, you have an orgasm. At what point do we look at people differently? They go from sexy to being cute.
Yeah, it's kind of like the reversal of, you see people that have been treated like, they go from adult to being treated like children. I think it's that certain point in time where we start looking at those around us as less than capable.
Because we marginalize and sometimes demonize senior citizens. We don't appreciate senior citizens. And that's all a part of that baggage that we're still carrying in the society that denies senior citizens their humanity.
Rayhans is on trial for allegedly having sex with his wife Donna as she suffered from dementia while at a local nursing home. Now
In April of 2015, 78-year-old former state legislator Henry Rayhans of Gardner, Iowa, was charged with rape for having sex with his wife Donna, who had Alzheimer's disease.
I do not know if she had the capacity or not. I always just assumed if somebody asked for something, they had the capacity.
You loved her?
I loved her very much.
You're still smitten with her?
I'm still.
Rayhans was found not guilty, but the emotional scars left by a grueling public trial will be with him forever.
The family says they are very disappointed to see their father charged with a crime that they believe was a very private matter from the beginning.
We all have relatives in nursing homes, and none of us would say we love them any less because of their location. And Donna's location did not change our dad's love for Donna, nor her love for him. It did not change their marriage relationship.
What Henry Rayhans and my grandfather wanted was for their adult desires to be treated with dignity. It was so simple. Yet, even today, honoring those desires is a rarity among long-term care facilities. But there are some exceptions.
People don't stop having sex just because they get old, and people don't stop having sex because they happen to live in a facility.
In 1995, the Hebrew Home, an elderly care facility in Riverdale, New York, authored the nation's first sexual rights policy for older adults in healthcare settings.
The people who live here are grown-ups. Intimacy is a civil right, at least from our perspective. We had an obligation as people that were taking care of older adults to be sure that that right to intimacy was preserved and protected.
Desire never stops because you think about the past. You know, you have memories. And when you have memories, you have desires. As simple as that.
I recall one scenario where we had a male individual who was discovered in a homosexual relationship. They both had early dementia. And he was married to a woman who lived in the community, and we had the unenviable task of disclosing to his children that Dad was in a homosexual relationship. When they understood that for whatever reason, this relationship was bringing their dad comfort and happiness, they came around to accepting it. What mattered was that he was happy.
Issues of sex, dementia, and seniors aren't going away. The question is where, how, and when will our society wake up and deal with them?
Our philosophy at the Hebrew Home is to be sure that we're working with what people have left, not what they've lost, but what they have maintained. Intimacy and touch, it is the last thing we lose that's pleasurable. Therefore, why not encourage it?
And all these ladies in here, they make me feel so good. They make me feel that spring has sprung. And every time I see them, I'm such a happy individual.
And just because you age doesn't necessarily mean you got to go somewhere and die. So I'm not doing it. I'll be 95 singing the blues with my beautiful wife and, legalize it. I'm gonna have fun.
As long as I'm breathing in and out, intimacy and sexuality are going to be a part of who I am, because that is part of who I am. Or you should never stop getting that feeling of being close and the intimacy. Never. That's what keeps you alive.
You, that's amore.
If we're lucky, we'll be old enough to think about having sex when we're 80, and that it can be great. I believe it can be great. Please don't censor it. Blurt out.
All right.
First thing that comes to
All
mind,
right.
okay?
All right.
All right. Puppy.
Kitty.
Small.
Dog.
Dog.
Kitten.
Cuddly.
Cat.
Litter.
Yarn.
Balmy.
Chapstick.
Willowy.
Stick.
Lauren.
Pocahontas.
Sweet.
Mindy.
Ice cream.
Tart.
Succulent.
Sticky.
Pussy.
Ice cream.
Gooey.
Hot.
Wet.
Wow.
Pussy.